Good evening. This is your host, Walt the Damager.
Rob, Cooper, what's going on, family?
What's going on? This is another episode of the Jump Off, the Real to Real, all in politics platform. So tonight we got a special guest, and I'm gonna let my man Rob the Jetta
Uh,
usher
uh,
him in.
Absolutely. First of all, good evening, everyone, and we're just happy to have you. Again, it's great to be on this all-in politics platform. This is a new platform for us, as you know. You've known us always as Real to Real, and now we're back live on YouTube, Apple, and Anchor and Spotify. So where we continue to build on our platforms, and we're happy to bring some good content in the political realm. And really, speaking of politics, you know, our great president has been in the news as he's always there, and with Black Lives Matter rolling. There's a key word that I've seen on a lot of social media pieces when they're talking about Black Lives Matter and some of the other protests that are going on. It is a word that many of them are sneaking in called Marxist, and it causes a lot of uh, curiosity. What is Marxism? What is communism and socialism? I know back when I was in elementary school and in junior high and in the 80s, I remember our teachers talking to us about Marxism and communism and socialism, and they never had a good light on it. But since the Bernie Sanders movement, he started talking about, socialism and things like that. And I picked up this interesting book, and I don't know if my background is kind of taken, but it's the Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, the Communist Manifesto. And with us today to kind of help us get an understanding of Marxism and socialism and communism and that concept, and looking at it from an economic approach. We brought on Tim from the International Marxist Tendencies, the Philadelphia branch. Good evening, Tim. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
That's good. That's good. It's interesting, Tim. We're hearing, the Marxist is a hot word now. It's a buzzword. Everybody wants to know, you know, what's going on with this. And I'm sure you guys over there at the International Marxist Tendency, or IMT, as you guys call it, the acronym for it. You guys been a little busy over there, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, these ideas are becoming more and more mainstream, and we're getting attention from even the president. So, yeah, these ideas are becoming popular, and we're getting some free publicity from the government.
So tell me, but what is Marxism? I know it's been some time since I've been in the classroom and actually kind of learned about some of the political perspectives. Tell the people about Marxism, and how it relates to either communism or socialism, and how do you see it fitting in maybe into a new economy as compared to what we're seeing right now in capitalism?
Yeah, so above all, I would call Marxism a method of analysis to sort of view our world, and especially in the political economy sense, both as a way of viewing history and how this world came to be, viewing the world today and how we can sort of understand it. All these events are happening, and how to make sense of the world we see today. And then, as Mark said, the idea is not to just understand the world, but to change it. So using this method of analysis to sort of take a judgment of the position that we're in and how to bring about socialism and hopefully eventually communism. And also, I would call Marxism sort of the generalized, distilled experience of the working class throughout history. All the lessons that are there to learn from both the victories and the failures that were basically learned in the heroic struggle of working class people throughout history, and taking these lessons so that we don't have to repeat those mistakes again, but can also take these lessons and learn how to transform society so that the working class can eventually take power. And that goes into what, for a Marxist sense, what is socialism is a transitionary phase. Once we sort of transcend and overcome and overthrow capitalism, socialism would be the transitionary phase when the working class is the ruling class in power, where they have state power and power over the economy in a democratic sense, running the economy democratically by and for the workers, and slowly transitioning into a stateless, classless, and eventually moneyless society that we would call communism, which is one of abundance, where the productive capabilities of our society working together become so great that we can produce abundance for everyone, and want and need and these struggles for resources are a thing of the past. And we have this, communist society. So that's sort of these ideas in a Marxist sense, as opposed to how they've been viewed, especially
Right.
since the Cold War.
Right, right. And I have a quick follow up on that. And I know you kind of delved into this. In reading some of the books, I noticed that Marx I know eventually he wants to get to a classless society. But one of the things that I guess to kind of break down and bring an understanding, he put in I think like three different type of titles for different classes. I know you mentioned the ruling class. I saw something where it comes to working class, bourgeoisie, petty bourgeoisie. Can you explain that to our audience and kind of bring it up to speed to how we would look at that from today's outlook?
Sure. So these are like definitions or terminology that Marx used in his writing that then, when you're discussing his ideas, you sort of adopt as you sort of discuss. And it's not so much a very dogmatic way of like, these are the three classes that exist and there's nothing else. It's more just of a rough way to sort of split society and class, which is how your relation to the economy, and in a capitalist society, your relation to capital. So, on the top, the ruling class, you would have the bourgeoisie, who are the ruling class of capitalist society that own the majority of almost all of the capital resources, and what Marx would call the means of production, the tools that we use to produce goods and services and things that humanity needs. On the flip side, the ones who are using the means of production and producing everything are what Marx would call the proletariat, or we call the working class, that does all the production and all the work,
Right.
and produces all the goods of society, but they don't own any property. The only property they have to sell is their ability to work. So they would sell their ability to work to the capitalists for a wage, and that's they work for a wage in order to survive. If they don't work for capital, they starve and go
Right.
homeless and are sort of left to their own devices. And in between that, you have what Marx and writers after him called the petty bourgeoisie, which you could call anyone who has enough interest in the capital market, owns enough capital to be comfortable, but they're not, sitting on top of, the echelons of society.
Right.
That they may go to a job and they may work, but they have a lot of autonomy in their job. They probably own some property. They have some interest in the well-being of the capitalist system, and this class is sort of caught between the two ends.
Right.
Where in history they tend to want to resolve the class struggle. They want,
Mm-hmm.
between the workers and the capitalists, they tend to not only sort of vacillate between the two,
Mm-hmm.
where in
Mm-hmm.
history sometimes they side with the workers,
Right.
sometimes
Right.
they side with the capitalists, but in the scheme of things, what they want is sort of the class struggle to sort of be flattened out, which in a Marxist sense is impossible. That kind of,
Right.
you know, it can go behind the scenes for a little bit, but they sort of vacillate between, and they largely have a problem sort of finding their own class identity, because they're sort of split between these antagonistic interests between the workers who are working
Right.
for a wage and the people who are profiting off of the workers.
So
So
these are the type of people that are most likely to be stuck in our two-party system, per se.
maybe, I mean, I think a lot of people who probably in their relationship to the economy, like our working class, who are stuck in the two-party system, but yes, they sort of have this interest of compromising,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, we can, you know, find a way that sort of serves both the workers and the capitalists, and we can, you know, this ideas of good capitalism, you know, we just need to regulate it more, or you know, the problem is corruption, or you know, those sort of ideas of
Right. Right.
capitalism can work. We just need to find out the
Right.
way how, by appeasing both sides. Those ideas are sort of very popular, and when you have that relationship to the economy, basically.
Oh, great. So when we're talking about identification and trying to find solutions which best suits the working class, I know for probably most of us in this room, in school, going back on what Rob said earlier, as far as the scholastic institution posing Marxism as a threat to stabilized economies and world dominations of the economic system, what is it that they actually fear or feel that would destabilize what they have already created? Like, what was their main purpose of placing this fear mongering and this poison and this cancerous man and his ideologies would not be beneficial to those of the states?
Well, a stabilized system for them, which I'm assuming is sort of, you know, the people who own, you know, the economy. A
Right.
stable system is a continuous continuous stream of profit that grows over time. So they continue to find profit on their investments, and their capital continues to accumulate. So that would be a stable system for them. And the ideas of Marxism and the ideas of bringing a socialist society about is a direct challenge to that, right? What we want production based on need, not on profit. We want the ownership and control of the economy to be democratically run by workers, not dictated and owned solely by a very small capitalist class, right? These are ideas that are an existential threat
Right.
to the interests of the people who own and control society and the
Right.
economy. So of course these ideas are demonized, but it's important to know that all the attacks on Marxism are never in good faith. They
Right.
never address the ideas correctly,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have an answer to these ideas, right?
Right.
They will never meet these ideas in you know, in the arena of, you know, dialogue. It's always a slander. So the distortion of socialism, or distortion of communism, especially after the history of Stalinism and the Cold War tactics and what happened in the Cold War, and what happened to the USSR, and how it degraded into this bureaucratic police state.
Right. Right.
They happily take those definitions,
Right.
but the idea of, if you ever see the ideas of socialism or communism or Marxism discussed in any mainstream revenue, you will never hear the words class. You will never hear
Right.
the words
Right.
workers. These are these are the things that they are trying to remove from Marxism. You might hear state ownership. You might hear like getting rid of private property, and these can be like scary ideas, but like you will never hear them define socialism as the economy democratically run by workers. I mean, because they don't want to address those ideas.
Right.
They'll never actually meet these ideas.
It's interesting too, and as you speaking of workers, as we kind of look at some examples with the COVID-19 coronavirus. We saw back in I think March, I believe it was, as we entered March, and we saw that we're getting closer and closer to what was appearing to look as if it was going to become a pandemic. And I know everyone was kind of up in a kind of uproar, but it didn't appear that the United States government and the economy and the world economy was willing to stop like what was happening, as we saw was happening in China at the time. And it's interesting because kind of bringing the sports piece in, it almost took the NBA. I think on March 11th, when the players practically just walked off the workers, and I guess in this case, practically just walked off the court and said, "Hey, we're not playing anymore." And then the owners, kind of looked at it and say, "Hey, yeah, this is not a safe environment." And then 2 days later, on March 13th, the president came on and gave kind of like a quasi state of emergency speech. And then, of course, after that, we went into a shutdown. And then no sooner than maybe 15 to 20 days, you had, I guess, what we would call, I guess, the petty bourgeoisie in this case, going to Capitol buildings throughout states who had primarily, oddly enough, Democratic governors, and pressuring them to reopen the economy. And now, seeing that we're hitting about 140 deaths and over 3.5 million COVID-19 cases here in the United States, we're starting to see that perhaps maybe that may have been a mistake. That perhaps we may have reopened and not listened to the workers. Talk to us a little bit. How was, give me the Marxist approach to these things, because we did have some examples, not necessarily Marxist, but some of the socialist countries, and how they handle the virus and also the economy, their particular economy, as opposed to what we saw here in the States.
Yeah, I mean, we always try to take sort of a material analysis to things. So, I mean, the ruling class has a very narrow interest, which is continuation of power and profit. They sort of have some disagreements on the best way to do that. You see sort of feuding between Democratic governors and the Trump administration on like the best way to do things. But in the end, what they want is the continuation of people to get back to work so they can continue to exploit labor, and their profits can continue, and the lines can go up. The markets can continue to grow. And that has always been their approach to things. So, I mean, you saw a large reluctance to close down, of course. Workers coming out of the office or out of the factories or out of any workplace they're working in. And also kind of trying to disguise their incompetence and their lack of preparation largely as we've outsourced our ability to produce to countries all over the world, largely China. I mean, we don't produce anymore, and we kind of saw that in the early days where
Right.
suddenly there were no masks, there were no PPE for healthcare workers. There, like suddenly we couldn't, find these goods because we've outsourced a lot of our productive capability as a
Right.
country. So I mean, it sort of highlighted a couple failures there, not only of like the interests of the ruling class, but of our sort of gutted production capabilities.
Yeah.
Um, and now you see that again, where like they were largely forced out of public opinion and the mass death to finally shut down, and they decided that they can just reopen again, and hoping that we become numb to the numbers just coming, and we start seeing human life as just numbers on a screen, as
Right.
more and more deaths accumulate, and it kind of shows you in a capitalist system the like what human life is valued as, which is if you can't contribute to the accumulation of capital, that
Right. Right.
you're not valued, and your value as a human being is solely judged on your ability to add to the growth of markets, and how quickly we sort of dehumanize these tragedies and these deaths, and how quickly we're learning to just accept this very preventable slaughter
Right.
of people over the world, kind of as a testament to that, where like you have advisors going on the news networks and referring to people getting back to work as capital stock, and they just want to see the green numbers on the screen, as their capital gains increase, and if they need to like kill only 2.5% of the
Right.
workforce that will go back to work. I mean, these are you're a number to these people.
Right.
The other countries, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call them socialist countries. They may have slightly more progressive
Mm-hmm.
ideas, but in the end, they're all trying to save capitalism. They're trying to save the capitalist system. Even I think it was Ireland, like
Right.
nationalized their hospitals. The government went in and nationalized their hospitals to run them in a planned way, which as socialists we would want a planned economy, not one dictated by competing
Right.
market
Right.
forces. So they sort of use, but it's not used to challenge the capitalist system in any way. It's largely to save it,
Right.
to save the status quo, and so there are governments that I would still call capitalist governments that would do these things that they feel is best to save the system, and then there's the United States there where we're just sort of like um, you're
Right.
on your own,
Right.
um, you know uh, you know admittedly hoping to numb people to the
Mm-hmm.
death, and there's a reason we're also one of the few countries that are dealing with this without a universal healthcare system
Right.
or a
Right.
nationalized healthcare
Mm-hmm.
system that is planned and run by the state. It's a for-profit healthcare system, and I think that is very it's a reason why we're in the state we are, the richest country in the world, just also leading the case in deaths. I think our healthcare system and the way the capitalist economy controls it is also
Right. You know, and I
a
and
reason for that.
And Tim, and I can see the comments coming in my either my Parler account or on YouTube once we put this up, or underneath our Apple or Spotify posting of this, and they say, "Hey, you Marxists, you say that capitalists, we don't value life, we put profits over people, but you Marxists, you guys are going to take away my rights. You're going to take away my civil rights, my constitutional rights." What is your response to that?
Um, what we want to, a socialist idea is for all of us to democratically run the economy. And I think that for us to express rights and freedoms as people could only be elevated by freeing people from economic precarity, where I may have a lot of I may have some freedoms on paper, though the state is basically doing a lot of cherry picking with what rights they want to enforce in the Constitution. But that aside, you have very little freedom when you're working all the time just to survive. You probably are working a job you hate or don't like. You have very little free time. Your actions and wants and needs and desires are restricted by the need to go and work for capital in order to survive. And we're not saying that people shouldn't like just be sitting on the couch being lazy. We're saying that or shouldn't be working, but that we can create a society where you are not threatened with starvation or homelessness because you can't add to capitalist profits, that freed from this gun to your head basically of economic destitution, that you can express yourself as an individual far greater than you could in a capitalist society. And I would argue that in a socialist and hopefully communist society, when all these mechanisms of oppression by the class system, the class hierarchy that extends into other social systems of oppression, once we work to free ourselves of that, and we will have a society where you can be far freer and have far more rights than the system. And a capitalist system to maintain this vast wealth inequality has to crack down on your rights. I mean, democracy and a capitalist system where the resources are owned by a smaller and smaller and smaller group of people are very counterintuitive, and they sort of have this very love-hate relationship, and you see how increasingly managed our democracy is, and how our rights are increasingly impinged upon. And that's only going to get worse as they need to exploit more and more to continue this accumulation of capital in smaller and smaller hands. I mean, we call this system a very free country, and yet the world was exposed to the police lines cracking skulls in the streets. I mean, that that is an impingement on rights to me.
Yeah, because I know that that's some great points you made, and also moving into how capitalism navigates racism, how they work hand in hand. A lot of the systems are breaking down, whether the economy, like I said, as far as these corporations and things of that nature. Where do you feel, or what steps do you feel as though need to be taken, and like what direction do you think Marxism should be shot into the American system right now, like a penicillin, to get this thing like ushered on and moved on? How long do you think that would, take into play, or how long would the expectations be to fully assimilate?
With how long is a very interesting question, because if you view sort of the progression of history in a very dialectical way, would be the way Marxism would call it, where sometimes nothing happens for a long period of time, and then suddenly in a very short period of time, like everything happens, and people's consciousness of their views on the world and on politics and their consciousness of the ideas changed drastically. Where there are plenty of people in society that didn't really care about politics. They were comfortable enough where they could sort of put it on the back burner. They were incensed about the latest thing Trump said, but their ideas of politics were largely it didn't really have to bother with it. Suddenly events happen where the police murder George Floyd, and suddenly everybody their ideas and their political awareness changes immediately to a great extent. Our ideas of Marxism is basically to keep these ideas and grow these ideas and learn these ideas and spread these ideas and sort of grow an organization that can learn and share these ideas. But we have great confidence in working people and people who are oppressed in society in this system that we don't need to we don't need to cause capitalism to go into crisis. We don't need to cause the class struggle to break out. It will happen. It's
Right.
sort of the inner logic of the system of oppression and exploitation. What we see our sort of role to play in this whole thing is to fuse these ideas of working people democratically taking power over the economy and the state, and fusing these ideas with these movements that I think we're largely seeing just the tip of the iceberg, really. I think we're entering a period of deep capitalist crisis. If the Federal Reserve cannot just continue to print money, that debt needs to be paid back somehow. We're going to see increased austerity and increased exploitation of workers, and they're going to be asked to pay for it, and that's going to heat up the class struggle, and we're going to see further mass movements. And to take these Marxist ideas and bring them to the people and hopefully share these ideas so that we can actually bring about showing working people that they have not only the power and ability to take control of society, but how to do it. And so how long it would take is a very good question. We try to learn from the past in order to, navigate the future, but it's not a playbook. It's not a blueprint. But I think we are entering a period where a lot is going to happen very quickly. People's minds are going to change very drastically very soon.
That's a good point that you made, and I think just if you kind of look at the pandemic, for example, how sometimes things kind of move in an organic type motion, where I think when just follow the elections, particularly the Democratic primaries, and when you had Andrew Yang when he was talking about, I think it was called the Universal Basic Income, or UBI. How when he first put that idea out there, even a year ago, even 12 months ago, to this day, when they began their debates, people thought that was a crazy and wacky, ideal. And then once the virus hit, people were like, hey, Andrew Yang's idea may not be such a bad thing. And, and even at the high levels of officials, I think that's how we got to $1,200, per person. And actually, other countries were actually doing something like that, where they were doing, maybe $1,000 a month or whatever, just to kind of sustain people and help them to remain socially distanced. It's interesting. I want to go back on when you talked about eventually a cashless or moneyless society. It's interesting because I know a great wise man, and I forget his name, but it was an old wise tale that I heard, that one day the economy is going to be so bad where you're going to see a man walking down the street with a wheelbarrow full of cash, and a couple thugs are going to beat him up at the corner, take the wheelbarrow, dump out the cash, and
It'll be
leave.
worthless. It'll be worthless.
Just saying how worthless. And it's interesting because I was at one of the fast food joints, and I saw a sign, and they said, "Please, please have exact change." Because we can't even change your cash. So if something comes to $14.50, we don't have if you give us 15, we don't have the 50 cents to give you back. I heard something or read something that coins are now being taken out of production. So it's interesting how this is an organic type process that's happening. But getting back on the racist piece that you brought up, Walt, uh, as I was doing some research for the show, and I went on the International Marxist Tendencies website, which we'll somehow figure out how to share that later on in the show. But I saw a quote by one of my heroes, Malcolm X, and I was surprised to see it. He said, "You can't have capitalism without racism." And I thought that was a real interesting quote. Uh, Talk to us a little bit about this, Tim. How do you see Marxism as being an answer, or getting rid of capitalism as an answer to racism?
Yeah, so I mean, as a white man, I can only understand racism from a very secondhand point of view. So I try to do more listening and understanding than preaching about it or anything. But I do think that, especially in this country, which was based on a slave state for the majority of its history, and largely relies on having a racial underclass, especially in our prison system and the labor that they provide for the capitalist economy, that to conquer or overcome racism and white supremacy cannot be done while maintaining a class hierarchy and a system of exploitation and oppression on an economic level. That as long as you have these economic and social forces of one class over another and a small minority exploiting and oppressing the few, I don't think, and I would argue, you cannot overcome racism because without conquering these, because they are so intertwined in our country. And we saw this when the last time we had a sort of very heated class struggle in sort of the late 60s and the early 70s, and largely, if you look at any part of the history of the labor movement in this country, the capitalists have always used racism as a tool to divide the working class. And even the union bosses in the 60s and the 70s, who were largely reactionary, class collaborationist union bosses, were very racist and would happily cross picket lines of, striking black workers. We saw this in the New Deal, where a lot of the policies of the New Deal were left out of industries that were largely, worked by black people. And that was not by accident, that was by design, where you see, every aspect of working class struggle in this country always tainted with racism as a tool to maintain capitalist hierarchy and the social hierarchy, maintaining this capitalist hierarchy, and these ideas, if the writings of Malcolm X, as you brought up, Martin Luther King was coming to these conclusions before he was assassinated. Fred Hampton had certainly come to these ideas, and the ideas of conquering class hierarchy in order to overcome racial hierarchy. and he was killed for it. Because he was starting to he was starting to expand his struggle beyond the struggle for racism to a an economic struggle, trying to challenge capitalism, and that is exactly what they do not want us to do, is to express solidarity, not only in a class sense but a racial sense. And I think we have a lot of danger in not only becoming classist, I guess, where like you view everything as only class, or you view everything as only race. I think these things are so intertwined, especially in America, where if we're going to overcome these tools of oppression, we have to understand how closely they're knit together.
Right.
That's my take on it.
And I agree with you. I think one of the things we talk about, the new kind of woke society, and one of the things that I see, and Bernie Sanders really talked about this. It really is. There's a 1% that controls most of the wealth, and then there's the 99% probably now fit into that the working class or working poor type segment. And it's interesting. People don't believe it. Kind of look it up, and really look at where the money is filtering to. I mean, years ago when I was growing up, it was 10%. So it's even shrunk from 10% to now 1%. And so it's the wealth gap is rapid. And I forget what I read that on, even from the time where, my dad was a union worker in the 70s. And seeing that wealth gap from the times when I was a kid to where it's at now, it's totally unbelievable. But yeah, we're going to wrap up. But before we wrap up, I think we believe on our podcast and our programming, education is the key, and we want folks to be able to kind of, get an understanding of politics from all of the spectrums. So Tim, won't you help us out with that, and tell us, tell folks how they can learn more about IMT, and also if they like what they heard tonight, and feel like they want to get involved and make a change, tell us how they can possibly join.
Before Tim starts, can I just say one thing? I want to interject real quick.
Sure.
We also want to put out there that the podcast that we hold is an open forum discussion where we have to move back towards that, where we need more dialogue. It shouldn't be about people's own principles and you following like the groupthink type of mentality. We all need to be open to all different types of suggestions and move towards a common goal of unison and some type of synchronicity, where everybody has the best interest of everybody and not just like individual thinking.
That's right. And that's the beautiful thing about this is we're not controlled. This is not corporate media. So, definitely we're open forum for I like to say, giving a voice to the voiceless. So Tim, if you want to kind of just talk a little bit about IMT and how people can learn more, and you guys got even some schools there to teach.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all. And I appreciate you letting me on here to, say my piece. So if you want to, if these ideas interested you, I hope I did a good job, at least representing them on the surface level. We have,
you did an excellent job.
Thank you. Marxist.com is the website for the International Marxist Tendency. The U.S. branch is called Socialist Revolution. You can find it at socialistrevolution.org. And then if you want to learn more about these ideas, we have an international Marxist school coming up. It's July 25th through 28th. Throughout those days, there'll be a series of talks. I hope you can register for free, but donations are always appreciated. I hope you can put the link on this episode, and there'll be talks from all over all over the spectrum of ideas. Is Marxism Eurocentric? Is Marxism versus anarchism? Talks on Marxist economic analysis. Talks on the police state. talks on Marxist philosophy, the whole spectrum. And I hope those who want to learn more can come and attend a couple of these talks and think about them and take these ideas and see if you agree with them. But I think I'm looking forward to it. We have over 3,000 people from over 96 different countries attending. So Marxism is very much an international effort. We live in a global economy, and we need global solidarity to overcome global capitalism. So it's I hope some listeners can attend.
Great, thank you, Tim. And also, folks, just to let you know, on All In Politics, we broadcast live on YouTube. So, excuse me, not live, but we broadcast our shows on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Also,
Smash that button. Smash it.
smash that subscribe button on Apple. Also on Spotify, and also go to our website and All In Network .net. We got some great paraphernalia out there, some sweatshirts, some t-shirts if you'd like to buy. Also gives an opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, we are not a corporate media owned platform. We're not CNN. We're not controlled by anybody. We can say what we want. We can have anybody who we want to come on and speak their piece, giving a voice to the voiceless. But sometimes we can't do that for free. So we need your donations as well. So feel free to, chip in whatever you can, 99 cents, $3.99 a month, $4.99 a month, whatever you can spare will go a long way in us kind of, pushing our mission to give a voice to the voiceless. Walt, anything you wanted to say before we close out?
Productive and progressive radio.
Great, man. So why don't you
And I
why don't you
thank
take us
Tim. We
home?
thank Tim. Okay, we thank Tim for the enlightenment and the information that was provided. We definitely will pass on the information for many more people to attend, and those that will wish to get down with the organization can get down. So without much ado, we love to have you on again. We definitely appreciate your time and your knowledge on the subject.
Please, anytime. It was a pleasure.
Okay. So we're signing off for another episode of The Real to Jump Off with Walter Damager.
And Rob the Jetta at Rob Cooper Jr. on Parler, not Twitter, Parler, a free speech network.
You got Tim. You want to give your info real quick?
I'm Tim. I'm at the International Marxist Tendency. I hope you can check out our website and check out those topics in the school. And I hope if you ever have any questions or want to learn more about these ideas, I hope you check those sources out.
Peace.
Peace.